Welcome to the Darnell and Cody show. Today we're going to do an update on our presidential candidate, Andrew Yang. We're going to be talking about how he's running for the Democratic primary position. And right now, currently, unfortunately, the media is doing a huge disservice to Yang and the Yang Gang, where they're essentially ignoring him. He's polling at 5th or sometimes 6th in the national and state polls in the primary caucus states. And he's raised over 10 million in his third quarter of fundraising, making the top 5 in fundraising for that quarter. But he's been left off graphs and demographics for both CNN and MSNBC. And he's just outright not talked about, not interviewed as often as even candidates who are doing worse than him in terms of polling and fundraising, such as Cory Booker, who is polling at best at 2% and has raised less than $4 million than Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang had $10 million, like I said. Cory Booker has about $6 million. So there's a very strange and clear bias that the media has against Andrew Yang, and sometimes not so much from one channel to the other. Like I said, CNN and MSNBC are particularly blatant about this, I would say. And it kind of shows that the media really doesn't like these outsider candidates. They kind of did the same thing to Donald Trump back in 2016, where he was running as an outsider candidate. The media totally ignored him, even Fox News, to be honest. And he ended up plowing through all the regime of candidates that he was running against. I think there was over 20 candidates at one point on the GOP stage, and he outran them all, being an outsider. And the media hasn't really learned their lesson, even from Donald Trump, who they constantly report on. And it's just very troubling and very blatant bias to me that they clearly don't like something about Andrew Yang. Perhaps that the fact that he's going to actually charge them a VAT tax for, how they run their businesses or what have you. But it is obviously blatant at this point, having gone through 2 debates so far and approaching the third debate, where he's going to be close to the center stage because of how well he's doing in polling and how well he's doing at fundraising. And they're still just leaving him off graphs, not talking about him at all. And to be honest, even during the debates, he has had far less speaking time than any other candidate. You even look at like Cory Booker, who will have a couple more minutes than Andrew Yang, and then you look at Biden and the top tier contenders like Warren, and they're doing 3 times as much of speaking time as Andrew Yang is, even though, as I said, he's close to top 5 or 6 in terms of polling. So I just am befuddled at this point. So what are your thoughts on this, Darnell?
I agree. It's befuddling, and at the same time, it's not. It's not surprising because the media, they're all bought and sold for. The politicians are bought and sold for. It's a open market of corruption, of special interests. And if you really think about it, who is not on that market? It's Andrew Yang. What corporation is financially supporting him? I can't think of one. He's a grassroots candidate. Everyone's supporting him. No more Americans are supporting him. He's average donation, I believe, is somewhere around $35, and he's raising $10 million in the third quarter. So of course you got these medias owned by special interests, major corporations, and they're not on the common man's side. They're not on our side. They're on the side of corporate interests and the side of whoever is paying them, whoever owns them. Who owns Andrew Yang? Nobody. And if right now is a time where if you want an open market on humanity, you donate to Andrew Yang, you purchase him and his ideas, because the media is not going to do that for us. The media doesn't care. The media just is interested in serving its masters, just like the politicians are. Everyone's bought into it for. It's a corrupt game, and that's why people elected Trump to begin with, because he has his own money. Nobody's paying him to do anything because he's a not a self-made man, but he's rich, right? So he's already rich. He's not a part of the establishment, so they elected him. But I mean, is he any better? Maybe in some aspects you could argue that, but the point I'm making is that in general, people are dissatisfied, and people are the media and the corporate establishment is trying to pull that back into a establishment focused candidate like Biden or Sanders or even Warren. They're all more or less, they all have their owners. I mean, Sanders to a lesser degree, but even he has certain corporate backing. Same with Pete Buttigieg and all these other candidates like Kamala Harris. Yang doesn't have any of that. I can't think of one corporation, any single entity that stands out that has made a major contribution to his campaign. He's really doing this not for legacy, not for political ambition. He's just doing this as a normal guy saying, I see a problem. I want to help people out. I want to make a better future for my family. And that's what inspires me to really support this candidate as opposed to all these other candidates in the field. And it's depressing that the media doesn't share that vision. And it's like I said, it's just the media isn't for the people at this point. They aren't. They're just serving their CEOs and whoever their CEO wants is backing, right? And that's especially kind of sad when Yang is one of the real candidates, I think, that can beat Trump. It's like a guarantee to beat Trump because he's peeling off Trump voters, libertarians, moderates. And one of the polls, I believe he beats Trump by 8%. And it'd be great if the media kind of got on our side and helped us with this. But I think it's kind of silly to rely on the media at this point. They've shown their colors, and it's up to us. It's up to us to get out there, donate more, convince one more person on the street, at the bar, at work, just networking. And introvert, extrovert, doesn't matter. I mean, like, you can do something as simple as like if you're like an online video game player who doesn't is like introvert, doesn't really go out much. You can still talk to people online and do what you can to help support the message, and that's important. It's the only way we can combat this media blackout, because we have to fight it. If you want someone that's truly transformational and for the people, for humanity, then we have to do what it takes.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and it's notable that 99% of the donations that Andrew Yang has received are from small donors, which is unusual and outstanding compared to other candidates. Trump has received an exponential amount from big donors, and other candidates, they can't claim the same number as 99%. And as you were saying, with the Trump supporters and libertarians that support Yang, there was a poll where up to 10% of Trump supporters would actually support Yang over Trump as well. So he has bipartisan support where other candidates are absolutely lacking. And I am gratefully fearful for the Democratic Party if they nominate someone extremely leftist, such as Elizabeth Warren, or honestly, potentially even Biden with his recent scandals, where his son has gotten this paid job from Ukraine. So Andrew Yang is really one of the top picks in terms of like realistic expectations for the Democratic Party to be able to defeat Trump, which seems to be the biggest priority for a lot of Democrats. And yet, again, he's just kind of glanced over by the media. A lot of people are dismissive of him as a candidate in general, with his just UBI plan as a one-term or a one-policy platform, which is just absolutely false. He has well over 100 policies detailed and laid out on his website, and how to pay for and get all these things done is explained. So Um, as I've said, I'm just deeply disturbed by how he's being portrayed and how people view him, even to this day where he's polling so well. Fifth or sixth is not fantastic when you're at 7 or 10% compared to 20%. So I really, really hope that America, and especially Democrats who are going to be voting for their nominee, realize that Andrew Yang is the one who actually has potential against Trump. And he's the one who attracts people who are on both sides of the aisle or even on the opposing side of the aisle, which is the important voters at this point in our political system.
Right, and I don't like all these arguments against UBI, especially when they're unfounded. I feel like people haven't really done the research, or if they have actually looked into Yang's plan, they attack it more of as a principle as opposed to actual reasons. They don't want people getting free money. Essentially, they're like, "Oh, free money! Like, oh, why should everyone get free money? I have a job. Why don't they work? Why don't they get a job?" And it's kind of a silly argument because his whole point of UBI is that, look, nobody's saying that people shouldn't get jobs and people shouldn't work, but more so, shouldn't people find meaningful work, and shouldn't people have some kind of safety net that they don't have to apply for, like, shamefully go to a government agency and ask for a handout? Shouldn't they instead feel empowered by a country that says that you're a valuable member of the society, you contribute, you're a member here, you're a citizen, we'll give you $1,000 and then it's yours to keep. You can supplement that with a job, get a part-time job, or you can, if you're a stay-home mother, for instance, you can just do what doesn't have a monetary value to it in the market. It's all about finding meaning for yourself in this life, and that's the situation. It's the next step we need in this society. Right now, we're all so absorbed in money and how, like, that it just literally runs every aspect of our lives at this point. So we have people working jobs they hate, that they despise, but they have to, put in their dues because they want to pay their bills and to get to the next to make ends meet. And that's fine. That's how life should work to a certain extent. But when you tell someone that's working, let's say 40 hours a week, and he can't afford to make any savings. Let's say he has a kid. He's paying for it. He's paying for his child. He has bills to pay. He's working like a minimum wage job, and he has nothing left over after working 40 hours every day. He gets the weekends off. Maybe he gets a week off a year for vacation. And you tell him, well, that's your life now. You have no, until you turn like 70 or 65 and you can retire. That's your life. That's depressing. There's no vision in that. And you're telling this guy that that's what you're gonna be. You're just a cog in the economy. But you give the guy $1,000 and say, "Hey, this is $1,000 for you." Now this guy can actually say, "Well, okay, I'm not just purely this cog in the giant machine. I have options. Even if I lose my job, I'm not gonna starve. I can go back to school. I have options to do what I can with this money." The people that are arguing that giving people free money is going to devalue work somehow. I mean, how valuable is the work that a lot of people do, anyways? Like, if you're a dishwasher, like, and you're supposed to find existential meaning in that, I mean, there's no existential meaning in just survival. You got to have capacity for more than that. And that used to be the case, that if you were a dish worker, you can work hard, save up some money, and there'll be more opportunities for you down the line. But right now, it's the case where tomorrow you might not be able to even dishwash. There might be a robot that's doing dishwashing for you. That's the whole point of UBI, saying that, look, you're more than just your manual labor. You're more than you're a human being. You can find more meaning, more purpose, and that's what UBI is really about. It's about giving people options in life and saying that you don't have to work be slave to whoever is willing to hire you. You can say, well, look, I still want a job. I still want to be a part of this society. Still want more for myself. Because let's face it, 1K a month, that's nothing. I mean, it's something, but it's like you can't live off that. Like anybody that tells you they can live off that, I mean, unless you're living in literally in a tent and you're spending $1,000 on just food, it's gonna be difficult to get by. And this whole point is that there's a fourth industrial revolution coming. Automation is coming. It's a reality. It's not coming. It's already here. And it's just a matter of how many more jobs are on the chopping block. And we already know that radiology and all these even high education jobs are being automated away. So it's more a bigger picture. It's not just free money to freeloaders. It's about saying, hey, you're a human being in the most powerful, richest society. Take part of its success. Be a member of this society and give that person a foothold to be someone that's a functioning, happy member of society, as opposed to someone that's discouraged and is gonna, be reliant on welfare or just be someone homeless. Because a lot of these welfare checks don't even go to people that are homeless these days. There's a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of blocks that actually prevent people from getting the care they deserve according to the state national law of welfare. So we have all of these problems, and UB is kind of, at the very least, be able to say, hey, $1,000 a month, you can at least feed yourself with that. You can at least buy a tent and have somewhere to sleep for the night. Go to a motel for the night. Like, it's not about freeloading and providing for freeloaders, lazy people. It's about saying, hey, you're a member of the society. Let's start treating you like a member of the society, instead of just saying, well, it's this life. Like, you made your choices. You can go starve and die in the streets for all I care. I mean, that's like the most, in a way, that's the capitalist mindset. And we have to start moving away from that, because more and more it's becoming unviable and untenable as more and more like minimum wage jobs start disappearing, and it's already happening. What do you think about that, Cody?
Well, I mean, like you said, with starting off with the welfare, you had a lot of things there that I'm going to touch on. But starting off with welfare, as you said, like, people are applying for jobs that they don't really want because of how the welfare system works and all this bureaucracy tied to it. Oh, well, I have to apply for X amount of jobs every week or else I can't receive my benefit. But I know for a fact that I'm not going to take these jobs because these jobs actually pay less than what my benefits give me every month. So instead of just wasting people's time with these, you know, jumping through hoops basically to maintain your welfare, UBI just guarantees you that, hey, you're gonna get $1,000 a month no matter what the heck you're using your time on. So, good on you if you're spending it productively, and if you're not, as Darnell has said, you're not necessarily gonna be able to live off this, at least long term, but you are gonna be able to put a roof over your head for a few nights if you fall in hard times, which is unfortunately the circumstance a lot of Americans find themselves in this current age. As you said as well, like the a big problem with a lot of the Democratic candidates is they're trying to just guarantee this jobs program where, oh, you're gonna uh, join this jobs program that the government provides and trains you for. You're going to do fabulously in this program. Everyone's going to succeed in this program, in fact, and they're going to love this program. And they're going to want to go to work every single day. It's going to be a fulfilling form of life, and everyone's going to live happily ever after. That would be a great story, and it would work if humans were robots. The problem is that human beings aren't robots. So we want work that is fulfilling for the individual, not for maybe what our country needs of us at that time. And, just trying to fill people with infrastructure work and trying to retrain them to do climate change, science, or installing solar panels or what have you, people may hate that work. They may be awful at that work. They may not want to show up for that job that you're guaranteeing to them. They may be an awful employee. They may have massive disagreements with their manager or boss who overheads them, which there obviously has to be, who is at that point hired by the government. So there's all these variables that are totally just like ignored by other candidates, and they forget the humanism of the aspect, to be honest. And that's where Andrew Yang comes in so importantly, is that he appreciates the fact that capitalism is what drives humanity to a certain extent, it drives our ambitions, but he wants a human-centered capitalism. And that is where every other candidate that has been running for the past 45 years has been failing, where they're pushing either growth in certain sectors as like the aspect of how well our country is doing, or now candidates are saying, hey, we're just going to give everyone a job, despite whether the fact that they're going to like it or be good at it or even, want to even do it. UBI guarantees you the options, as Darnell was saying, to find what you like. And that's what's so important about UBI. I'm not going to die tomorrow if I decide that I'm not going to take this job that pays me minimum wage that I honestly can't live on long term or even realistically within the next 6 months. I'm not going to take this job because I can look tomorrow to find a better job, or I can write a book, or I can start my own business, or I can do a plethora of things. I can invest and come out on top of my investments. The options are grand when you are just given this money with no attachments and no need to have this other career or what have you, and showing up somewhere for it. You can spend your time doing what you choose to do, and that's empowering to humanity as a whole. And that's where Andrew Yang, like I said, he is just in the outfield compared to these other candidates, and it's refreshing in this political climate. And as for what he Darnell was saying about how well the economy is doing, like we have been running this GDP scorecard into the ground as a country, and that's the next topic I wanted to get into. We have this GDP that literally is failing us because, yeah, corporations are doing great. Life expectancy is in the decline for the first time ever since the Spanish flu, I believe, back in like 1912. So, like, we're not doing well as a country. And Andrew Yang wants to basically redefine and remove the GDP. He wants to implement something called the Improved American Scorecard, where he changes not only how well our economy is doing, but the well-being of human state, such as mental health. He wants to, see how well environmental equality is doing, how well our childhood success rates are, our infant mortality rates, the quality of infrastructure. So Andrew Yang is looking at something that, like I said earlier, is human-centered. He doesn't just care about the fact that, yeah, like uh, rich people are doing very well. Our GDP has steadily increased for the past 40 years, and it's looking like it's going to continue to increase, despite the fact that people aren't on the day-to-day basis just not able to pay their bills. So this is where Andrew Yang just sees absolutely differently, and he's modernizing our entire government and reforming it in a very influential and meaningful way, and so that we can start reshaping the way that we think about our own lives. And if you're staying at home taking care of your grandmother or your mother because she's ailing and sick, and you're not getting paid for that job. Suddenly, you're getting $1,000 a month, and your grandmother or mother is also getting $1,000 a month. So you're suddenly actually have a job that you're getting paid for by the government. And that alone is something that is, like I said, would be targeting towards the benefit of human beings and the well-being and mental state of everyone. And this is where Andrew Yang, just like I said, he recognizes humans first, besides just this capitalism that has run everything for so long.
Right. I think the big argument is this: is that I agree with the statement that people don't deserve free stuff. People don't deserve what everyone. I mean, people don't deserve $1,000 a month because they're people. But the argument isn't about if people deserve it or earned it. That's not the argument here. The argument really is, what kind of society do we want to move towards? Because if we were saying that we're going to purely live by capitalist laws, capitalistic philosophy, free market, then we're essentially saying that we're operating on the rules of the survival of the fittest. Just saying, well, hey, look, my business is doing better. I'm doing well. If there are people starving in the streets, hey, they didn't make the cut. It's evolution. They should just die off, and we get to reproduce. And that's the society we live in. That's nature. That's life. Is that the society that we want to live in? I don't think anybody wants to live. I mean, that's the privilege of being a human being. We don't have to live like beasts in the jungle. I mean, we do. Arguably, we're the most parasitic race in the species in the history of the world. But at least for ourselves, at least as far as our own society is concerned, we have the capacity to make a civilization right now. And philosophically, what do we want? We want a society where it's really no better than the jungle. It's about, hey, you gotta slave and struggle to make that buck to feed yourself, and how an animal is starving and afraid in the cold and dark. That's how you have to survive in society too. Is that society we want to live in? And I'm not saying that we get rid of all work. I'm not advocating a society where people get everything's free. People don't have to work. That's not a society I'm advocating. I'm saying that we should at least build a society where, for people that are either disadvantaged or living on the margins of mental health issues, or just general despair, where things aren't going your way, people down on their luck, and we say to these people, hey, well, I guess that's life. That's life. That's how it goes. That's how the cookie crumbles. You go rely on charity. Go to a church. And is that the message we want to send to people? Is that the society that we want to live in? I don't. And I'm not saying that like out of just pure self-interest. I'm saying that because I genuinely, I have a job. I'm doing fine. I'm doing well. I don't need that extra $1,000 a month. But I'm saying, do we want to live in a society where people are so callous as that? Because the fact is, despite what all these libertarians and conservatives might argue, that a lot of the welfare should just be based on charity. The fact is, the charity doesn't cover it. It can't cover it. It doesn't have that scale and capacity. So there are certain things that the government can do, and it's good at doing, which is giving money and cashing checks on a regular basis. And it's not so nefarious as people make it sound. It's not free money. How do these corporations make their money? How are they making their wealth? They're selling our data. They're automating that. What I don't want to say is our job, but they were the job of the people on the market, and they're saying, well, now a robot can't do it, so you're out of luck. I mean, how long until doctors are out of a job? How long until the lawyers are out of a job? I mean, law is just about interpreting the law. I mean, AI can do that. Give it enough time. AI can interpret the law better than a human being. Probably more fairly, objectively. Give it some time to a robot to do some medical surgeries. I guarantee they can do it with more precision. They can do a better job. Brain surgery, I'll trust a robot. Give it a few, give it the best AI that's capable. Give it a few a few years of training, it'll perfect it. All these jobs eventually, any job is eventually liable to be automated away. Besides, creativity and artistic endeavors, even they are, arguably at risk. My point is that the UBI is just it's an inevitable future. If we and it's not a bleak outlook where everyone's gonna be out of job and everyone's gonna be broke, can't find job. What I'm saying is that eventually we're gonna have a society, probably preferable society, where we want jobs to be automated away. I mean, do we really want human beings mopping up, working a janitor 60, 40 hours a week, whatever it is, and he's that's his job and that's his job forever? Do you want to live in that society when we can have a robot doing that for him? When we can have all these manual labor automated away? I want to live in a society where that's all automated away, and we as human beings finally live in a society where we say, hey, we can do more than just work for a paycheck. We can actually sit here, go outside, do stuff that's meaningful to us. That's the value. That's the human experience, isn't it? Instead of just saying you have to make this paycheck and you have to survive, and you get these 2 days off in the weekend to unwind and de-stress, and then you're back to the grind again. I mean, how depressing is that? I mean, unless you're doing meaningful work, like the job you love. If you're doing a job you hate just for a paycheck, it's a bleak outlook to look at life. You only have so many years before we die, and I get that. Your meaning can be the money. The money can be the meaning. Making the money can be the meaning. Providing for your family, buying the stuff that you want to buy. I get it. But I'm saying, if it doesn't have to be that way, and the society that we're living in, where all these scientists are automating all these jobs away, if that can be a positive instead of a negative, shouldn't we kind of look at it as a positive? Because and incorporate that into the UBI? Because do we want to live in a society where we have these tech trillionaires ruling human society, determining who lives and who dies because they automated all the jobs away and they own all the robots? Is that the society that we want to live in? I don't think. I mean, of course we're not there yet, but why wait for that to be the case? Why not set the framework for saying, hey, it's coming, it's already happening to a certain degree. Let's be ahead of the curve. Give people options. Give people the options. Give people the safety net to seek meaning beyond their work, feel security and comfort, and that's the humanitarian aspect of it. That's looking at a human being as a human being and not as what are you worth on the market? How much can you make in an hour? That's the most depressing way, in my opinion, to look at a human being. What can you make in an hour? What are your thoughts on this, Cody?
I agree. I mean, if you look at it, we've kind of been moving this way for a while. When even 400 or 500 years ago, kings would say, the progress we're making, men will only work 15 hours a day in the future. That concept is foreign to us. We years later are working the same amount of time that people were working on the farms back in the day. And people are sometimes even working more than that to try and make ends meet, as you said. We have people that work far more than 40 hours a week, and they can't make ends meet. And so Andrew Yang does address this, where he wants to raise the minimum wage beyond what we have now, which is honestly just meager and substandard living wage. But a lot of candidates erroneously try and raise this to $15 an hour, is the highest I've seen. And it is working in Washington State. As far as I know, I read up on this quite a bit, and they do have a $15 minimum wage in Washington State. However, I don't see that working across the country. Just having anecdotal experience where jobs struggle to pay me my $12 hourly wage, which isn't bad, and then independent small owners of companies looking for newer employees in an industry so that they don't have to pay as much potentially. And then if their business starts, doing pretty well, then they can pay their employees that who have been on service since the beginning of their company a bit more. Like these all shouldn't the minimum wage shouldn't punish employers who are looking for employees. And the UBI is like a supplement of that. And in an extent, it raises the minimum wage or it raises all wages, to be honest, by $6 an hour. If you're working 40 hours a week. So if you're receiving minimum wage, which Andrew Yang proposes around like $9 an hour, would be his federal minimum, you would still be getting about $15 an hour with the UBI, which is what other candidates propose. But then Andrew Yang has such a better way of getting there without just putting the burden totally on the backs of businesses and especially small businesses, which will specifically suffer. And those are the guys who we should be trying to help right now in our economy. We have massive mega corporations, which the VAT tax, which Andrew Yang wants to impose on all across the board, would mostly target are these mega corporations like Amazon. Um, but he isn't going to damage the small companies in the way that other states are proposing by raising this minimum wage. And that in of itself, working for a small business that can give you benefits, maybe you have to work there for a year first, but then you have a long time career with this employer. You helped them from the start up, and so you have like an emotional investment almost in that company. Um, these are the kinds of things that are human centered, and that's like the fundamental thing, as Darnell was talking about with Andrew Yang. As I was saying as well, he understands that we aren't just cogs in a machine trying to grind away our, our hours to make our ends meet. We want fundamental meaning where we wake up in the morning satisfied. And if you can work for a business that you like, that's, a startup company that's really trying to do something that you're motivated about, UBI is just another way where this absolutely helps the startup company and yourself by finding options for both the entrepreneur and the employee looking around for jobs. What are your thoughts on this, Darnell?
Yeah, $15 minimum wage is a horrible idea in my opinion. Just across the board, it's a horrible idea. I mean, it's good if you live in a high cost of living area, and they definitely should have a $15 minimum wage for that state. Like if you're in California, or not even the state, just like if you're in a city like California or New York, yeah, you need a minimum wage to just to make ends meet, like to survive. I mean, that's obvious, but that's not the same case in Wyoming or North Dakota. I mean, come on. You can't apply that as a federal law across the board. What is that saying to the guy that's owning like a deli, like a local deli, and he has like 3 employees? He is making like, I don't know, let's say 10K. Where now he's just like, pay after rent and all this shit. Now he's not making any, like barely making any money. It doesn't harm big businesses. This minimum wage isn't targeted towards harming big businesses because big businesses don't care. They make enough money. It's like, you're gonna raise the minimum wage? Well, I still care about my bottom line. So what am I gonna do? Well, it's an incentive to me to say, what can I downsize? What can I automate away? What can be more efficient for me? The small businesses don't have that option. You can't automate a waiter. You can't automate a chef that you have. I guess you could eventually, but right now, like, it's not if you're a small business, especially the small business is not going to be able to automate a waitress. So you're eventually just harming small businesses. Big businesses will, at the end of the day, benefit from this. They're saying, well, you just speeded the process of automating jobs away. At the end of the day, I have a robot that works for free, works longer, can work indefinitely, day and night, doesn't need vacations. You're incentivizing automation with this $15 minimum wage. So it's a bad idea across the board, in my opinion. It's not a look. The minimum wage, the whole argument was because back in the old days, you had immigrants come in, they'll work for like 10 cents an hour, whatever. But now that's not the case. That the immigrants aren't the issue. Now you're competing against something far more competitive and far more industrially, economically viable for corporations, which is robots. And they have the technology. They're already implementing it. So the minimum wage argument is just going to be destructive overall. It's well intentioned, but is it really? It's like a Trojan horse. And the guaranteed jobs you mentioned earlier, yeah, I just don't see it working. It's like the socialists, the communists tried that in Soviet Russia, where they're like, well, everyone has a job, everyone gets paid the same thing exactly. It's all good. I mean, what incentive do you have to work hard if your job is guaranteed? I got fired. Well, I have a guaranteed job by federal mandate. I'll just get another job. It's guaranteed, right? Unless they're saying, well, let's say they implement like a 3 strikes rule. You get 5 from 3 guaranteed jobs, and you get no more jobs. I mean, I guess I can get something behind that. But I mean, even then, the whole principle behind it, it's like I don't see it mathematically adding up. There's not going to be enough jobs. It's the fact. I don't think there's going to be enough jobs, especially when there's automation as an option. So it's more like this promise of saying we're gonna make up a job for you. That's what I fear the most about this program. We're gonna make up a job. There are no jobs. We're gonna make a job for you. We're gonna find something. We're gonna make a new job that's meaningless and it's not efficient. But we're gonna make one, and we're gonna have the government pay for it and pay you for it because, well, that's my platform. Guaranteed jobs. I mean, to me, it just seems like a foolish idea. I still believe in capitalism, but like Andrew Yang says, like you need it bottom up. Give the people the money. They're gonna spend it. They're not gonna just they're not buried in their backyards. People, like, come on, like they're gonna spend it. It's gonna go back to the economy, and that's gonna create jobs. Because hey, people have money to spend. Well, now I need to hire people because I can't manage all this, people by myself. I gotta hire a waitress. I gotta hire a chef. I gotta hire another mechanic. People are gonna have jobs. People are gonna have options because people have money. It's fundamental. It's like trying to play a game of Monopoly without any money. Like, let's say you don't start with any money in Monopoly, so you can't buy any property until you pass go. I mean, how boring, how stupid, how this doesn't make any sense in the ground level. So instead of that, just say, hey, you get this $1,000 dividend, and you can work on top of that and supplement your income. And now, even if you're making, let's say, the poverty line, which is $12K, now you're making $24K. That's double the poverty line. Now you're at least have options that you're not poor by even our own standards of government standards. So that's important to me, I think, and that's what people need to understand about these other proposed programs. I mean, this UBI is superior in all aspects, in my opinion. And a lot of people argue that UBI is going to harm welfare, and not that because like people misunderstand that welfare or UBI is going to replace welfare. They're not afraid of that. They're saying that the UBI is going to cause like inflation, and then people that don't get UBI because they have welfare won't benefit from this, and they'll just be suffering from it because now things cost more, but they still don't get more benefits. And Yang addressed this actually on the separate podcast. He said that we can adjust these variables. So let's say UBI causes 10% inflation in food or something. Well, then we give 10% more benefits in food stamps or for disability, whatever the case may be. There's ways to address this, but people that are making a blanket statement saying that it's gonna be a regressive, it's gonna harm welfare. I don't think they're really understanding the bigger implication of what UBI is. It's not just for people strictly on welfare. I mean, it's the whole thing. UBI is supposed to replace welfare in a sense that, like you said earlier, it's supposed to give you an incentive to work instead of saying, I make more on welfare. I get more benefits by not working. I mean, that's like that worst case scenario. You want to avoid that at all costs. You don't want those kind of mentality, but you're supporting it by having these welfare programs. So welfare, UBI across the board addresses this, and people that are against UBI, I really I mean, my whole rant right now is about trying to address those people. Like you guys gotta think a bigger picture about this. It's not just free money for people that don't need it. It's like everyone, not everyone, but like a lot of people need it. It's like it's not about just the guy that's a heroin addict or it's some guy on the streets that's homeless that needs welfare. It's like, and I don't like the term welfare either. It's like the UBI is supposed to be you're a citizen of this country, you're a member here. There's no shame in getting a dividend for it because you're a part of the powerful, most successful civilization in the history of the earth. And why should you be starving? Why should you be shedding on the streets? Why should you be pitching a tent? And it's ridiculous. What kind of society are we really saying? This is the best that humanity has to offer? Really? This is a society that humanity has to offer? The best form of society that we advocate? We say America is number one. We say America is the best. This is what we are advocating? I think it's a joke. I think that people need to wake up and say that, and at least give UBI a chance. And I'll be the first one to say maybe it doesn't work when at least we give it a chance and say, okay, it didn't work out. But can we at least like give it a shot? Like, I don't understand people's resistance against this idea with such religious zeal. I'm saying let's at least try the idea before we dismiss it like so dismissively. I don't understand this. What are your thoughts on this, Cody?
I mean, I see where you're coming from, where it is frustrating, where, as you've said, people are just outright dismissive of it, and the whole point of government is honestly experimentation. It's trial and error. What it works and what doesn't is like the fundamental aspect of like how to govern things. And throughout history, we've had a heck of a lot of trial and error. We've learned that monarchies probably suck, and communism didn't turn out too great, at least in recent history, and really wasn't tried prior to that, as far as we know, and unless it was like tribalistic eras. So we gotta go with what we've got, and it seems like what we are running right now, at least in America, is not helping people. We have homeless people, as you're saying. People starving in America. There is outright suffering, drug overdose, gangs, just like doing all kinds of nefarious activities. There's so much that can be addressed in a societal standpoint by just giving people um, a capitalism where you don't start at zero. You're not immediately born with this boot on your throat where your mom is struggling to pay her bills for after working 60-hour weeks, or there's just so many circumstances of the individual which are ignored by our like GDP driven scenario that we have been running for so long. Um, and as Darnell said, it like we can't be satisfied with the fact that people are waking up on the streets every day. We can't be satisfied with the fact that people are waking up and their children are hungry, and that they're not sure where their meal is going to come from, and their father is struggling with an overdose addiction or an opioid addiction, I'm sorry, and may overdose the next day or may commit suicide the next day because they can't pay their bills and they're so depressed about how they're living their life because they got fired from their job and their job was replaced by automation. We're not winning as like a species in America, and that's like the call of urgency that Angie Yang and me and Darnell both feel. It's like we all know something's wrong here, and not many people are aware that Angie Yang is addressing these issues, and we just wish that so many more people would awaken to the awareness. Hey, this guy, he might not be offering perfect solutions, he might be offering flawed solutions to these problems, but he at least acknowledges these problems and he is trying to address them. And it is an urgent matter, at least in terms of an economical standpoint, as well as as we've said earlier, life expectancy is declining because of suicide and overdose. And like that is just fundamentally something that Americans should be having uh, gripe with. They should be calling this out on the daily, and a lot of people just kind of they just live their lives as if everything is good for me. I can at least tuck my kids in at night and forget about the guy in West Virginia who is struggling with his back pain and got addicted to crack after he couldn't afford to pay for his painkillers anymore. And now he's contemplating suicide, and he's got 3 kids at home, and he's a 60-year-old man. Like these things are real, and this is happening all over our country, and it's just not being expressed by any other candidate. Andrew Yang is expressing these things, and Donald Trump was honestly expressing these things in a way, at least back when he was running, and that's why I believe he got elected. So, our country is at least aware of these things, and we all, as at least a party democratically, the Democratic Party needs to wake up right now.
Right. And another argument that I heard against UBI was how it's going to be paid for. And people are always so concerned, like, oh, how are we going to pay for this? How are we going to pay for this? And I love Andrew Yang's answer for this. He's saying, hey, when this XX corporation needed a bailout, we found the money. Hey, when Wall Street needed a bailout, we found the money. When the people need a bailout, do citizens ever see anything of that? No. Because the government doesn't care about the people. The government only cares about who's paying them. At least paying the people that run the government. The politicians, like I said, bought and paid for. So they care about Wall Street. Do they care about me? Do they care about you? Do they care about the common guy working? No. I don't see it. I don't see it reflected. And maybe you can argue that they offer other societal services. They maintain a military. They start these wars over the other side of the ocean to make me feel safe. They provide the police force that often indiscriminately shoots people that they perceive as a threat. Yeah, these are the reasons that people, or the government at least, try to justify themselves for bailing out their owners. What about us?
I mean,
What about the people? Right?
you're hitting the nail on the head here, and this is what Andrew Yang addresses with the democracy dollar we talked about earlier, where he's offering everybody $100 a month, which would outdo these private interest groups by like one or 8 out of 1, I believe, is the statistic. Something like that, maybe 7. But if every single American had $100 to donate to the candidate that they chose, for instance, all of these corporations would be bought out. All these special interests and lobbying groups and everything that everyone has a gripe with, which is what you're talking about, they would just be so overwhelmingly outdone. And that's the beauty of it. Andrew Yang even recognizes this, like, on the side of everything else.
Right. I mean, that's a yeah. Democratization is a great idea, but going back to how we're gonna pay for UBI, he's proposing essentially a VAT. And my point was that we found the money to bail out these corporations when we needed to, but now people are so resistant against the idea that maybe we should spend these funds that are supposedly too extravagant to us. Can we invest some money to us as individuals, as people? No. We can't be trusted. We're too irresponsible. We don't deserve it. Corporations do. Wall Street does, but not us. Not individually. No. And that's depressing because, well, whose money are they taking to pay off Wall Street when they needed a bailout? It was all of our money. But when we need a bailout as citizens, the government turns its back on us. That's depressing. and they need to address that. That's not how ideal society should run. Really, that's the vision. It's absolutely ludicrous, and we can't have that. So going back to how we're going to practically pay for a UBI, he's proposing a VAT tax, and everyone familiar with his plan knows that he's going to be taxing corporations on data, on every Uber mile, Facebook ads, Google searches, all these other things that big tech companies utilize and kind of have made out of our data, out of our participation in their ecosystem. And it's gonna come a little bit of it. It's not all of it. It's not even the majority of it. A little bit is gonna come back to us as a part of that tax, and that makes sense to me. That versus a wealth tax, because a wealth tax is ambiguous. It's hard to define wealth if someone has real estate or someone has something that's hard to objectively measure as being worth something, like a painting or any piece of artwork really, or even just like a stock. A stock can fluctuate on a daily basis. It's hard to tax people on something like that. That's why income is easier to tax. But someone like Jeff Bezos, they're too smart. Warren Buffett, these people are too smart to have a taxable event happen, and that's why
even housing, like people can lie about how expensive their houses are, so like that's millions of dollars you can potentially avoid.
right, real estate is a big thing, like land and everything included. So the VAT is foolproof, and that's why all these major economies use, like Europe, they use a VAT, and it's there for a reason. It's saying, look, anytime that you make a profit, we're just going to take a portion of that. We're not taking all of it, or even the majority of it. We're just taking a portion of it. In fact, what Andrew Yang is proposing isn't like even half of what the VAT tax is in Europe, I believe. I'll have to double check that. But I believe it's not even half what Europe is doing right now, currently. And he's just saying, let's take a portion of that and give it back to the people. Who's going to do what? Bury it in their backyards? No, they're going to spend it back into the economy. It's going to create more jobs. It's going to get people's, relieve people's anxiety about making it and surviving. And overall, it's just a bigger picture. And I don't understand how people think a wealth tax, like some of these other candidates are suggesting, is going to fix that. You really think so? A lot of people argue that wouldn't the VAT create capital flight? Wouldn't corporations just leave and start a business elsewhere? Where are they going to go? Canada? Where are they going to go? Mexico? Really? Europe? Where they already have a VAT tax? Where are they going to go? It's a foolish argument. I really feel like America still is the best place to do business. And yes, part of that reason I'm willing to grant is because we have favorable tax laws that allow businesses to maximize their profits. But it's also because we still are the most powerful economy. We have the most bright people here. We have the best education available in the world. And if you want to maintain that, I really feel like we need the UBI. We need people that are let's give an example. Let's say Einstein was born into a poor family. Let's say Einstein made a poor decision and knocked up a woman during his college years, and he's working. He has to support a child and a wife, and he's working at McDonald's as a cashier, and that's his life. Let's say there's a UBI factor added to that equation. Now he's getting $1,000. His wife is getting $1,000. Okay, and they can feed their child. They can pay rent, utilities, and he has a little bit extra time to say. Let's say he's getting a part-time job and go to school. Now he has options. His livelihood is drastically changed from what it was in the other option, in the other circumstance. That's what it's really about. It's about, can we broaden the scope, broaden the possibility, broaden the human experience? Like, do we have to say, hey, you made a mistake, now you have to Now society is saying we don't care about you. You made a mistake. Now you gotta live like this for the rest of your life. Like that's fair in a world that has to operate that way. But now we're saying that it doesn't have to work that way. We have options. Like we're the most powerful economy, and we have the most stuff. We have the best available things available to us. Why should we live like that? Why should that be the end of Einstein's life if that's in that scenario? We have things that we can provide for him, provide for every American. So that's what I really don't understand against people that are suggesting a wealth tax and argue against UBI, saying that it's going to be too expensive, or a VAT tax, saying that it's going to cost capital flight. I mean, is a wealth tax really going to be effective, which historically has proven to be ineffective? I mean, presently, right now, to be proven to be ineffective, versus a VAT, which is working right now in Europe. I mean, if you were really arguing against a proven method against the unproven method, or the non-existent method. So, next to that, do you have anything to comment on that, Cody?
But yeah, just one more thing to add, like a historical aspect on all of this. Like, Thomas Paine at the founding of our country was for UBI. Martin Luther King historically was for UBI until the moment of his death. And even most recently, really like the last candidate that, before neoliberalism, as far as I understand it, began in our country, Richard Nixon, surprisingly enough, who his scandal couldn't be talked about in just one podcast, to be honest, but no need to touch on that besides to say that I absolutely think that it was abhorrent. However, the candidate himself, Richard Nixon, as a president, during his own presidency, twice, the House of Representatives passed a version of the UBI into law. And this wasn't passed by Democratic members of the Senate at that time because they felt that it wasn't enough money. They were guaranteeing $1,000 at the time to every single American citizen per year, not just per month. And Democrats at that time thought that, hey, we'll just wait until next year, and then we'll be able to propose an even greater amount of UBI. Maybe we'll get it to $3,000, what have you. And then he ended up getting impeached and blah, blah, blah. So, like the whole state of the country shifted at that moment. But even this man, Richard Nixon, was in favor of UBI in our country's history. So this is like fundamentally an American ideal. Everyone has recognized that if you live in our society as an American, you can benefit from how well we're doing. And that's changed in recent years, as I've said, particularly in the past 40 years. And now we're starting to get back into the groove of things where we recognize, hey, this actually makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. And to be honest, there's absolutely no reason why we're not doing it besides the fact that we don't want to help our citizens. We just want to help our corporations. So, that's where I'm going to leave it on that subject at least. So, you had a next topic. Please carry on, Darnell.
Yeah, I mean, I want to just add on to that. It's really about if we want people to care more about their immediate concerns. For example, climate change. Andrew Yang often mentions this. He's saying, if you want people to care about climate change, you got to get the bootstrap off of people's throats. Like if you're struggling to pay bills, you don't care about that. Ice caps are melting in the South Pole. I mean, who cares about that when I'm struggling to feed myself? You know what I mean? Like the problem was that if you want, so a lot of people, I feel like this is generalization, obviously, but I feel like a lot of people care about the climate in a very superficial level. They only care about it in the sense that I don't want my backyard to be overflooded with water. I don't want my front lawn to be, waterlogged and there's fish everywhere and it's gonna be messy and it's gonna be. I don't want to. I have a nice home. I don't want to mess it up by climate change. I feel like a lot of people are very superficial about how they worry about climate change. It's really about I want a safe place to live. I want a clean place to live. I want a good place to live. And that's fine. I get it. It's self-interest. I understand it. Whatever. But if you want other people to care about that, then you got to at least give these other people a vision about the future. I mean, that's what UBI is about. I mean, you can't be like, hey, your backyard's going to be flooded too. Your front yard's going to be flooded too. It's going to be all messy. And this guy's saying, hey, I don't even know if I'm going to have a place to live. I don't even know if I'm going to have a front yard in a week or two. Or you just say that thing to a homeless guy. Hey, man, like, all this place could be flooded. And, global warming, it's going to be terrible. And the homeless guy's like, hey, I don't have a home. I'm not, I don't even know if I'm going to be alive next week. You know what I mean? Or he doesn't care. He's just like, hey, I'll move.
It's already terrible for him. He doesn't care about next week.
He has bigger things to worry about than climate change, right? If you want people to really care about climate change in the abstract or in the superficial level, where there's just immediate concerns, you got to get the boot off people's throats, people's backs, like Andrew Yang says. You got to at least give people hope and a future. And that's when, I'm not saying this for America. I'm saying this for the whole entire world. Because America is like, I believe, only 30 or 50, like somewhere between 15 and 30% of the world's CO2 emission and pollution, whatever they're contributing to global warming. We're not, like, America alone isn't responsible for this. It's the entire world. If you want China to get its act together, you want India to get its act together, you got to give their people a vision of future, like a vision of future too. And let's be honest, have we really been a good model? Have we really set a good example of what could be? I don't think so. Not when we have homeless people shedding in the streets. Not when we have, how do you live in one of the most high cost living areas, one of the supposedly classiest, most liberal, modern cities like San Francisco, and it's overrun with people shedding in the streets and like heroin needles on the floor? That's our pitch to India and China. Hey, you can be like us one day. Follow our footsteps. That's our pitch as a supposed first world country. Really? I'm saying that we gotta be better than that, right? And then the current system doesn't allow for that. We marginalize our homeless and our drug addicts as criminals, as vagrants, as a nuisance, as opposed to saying, hey, you're still a member of a society. We still care about you. It's a health issue. How many of these people, all these people have a human struggle, human suffering, a story to tell. It's about humanizing these people. It's about having some humanity in you to see these people as your fellow man. Isn't that kind of what America's about? Like, yes, we're individuals, but we still want people to have the best life they can possibly have. The pursuit of happiness. We want to make that the easiest thing as possible. We want that to be available to everyone. That's the dream. And I think we've really forgot about this. And I think UBI is really the only thing that's going to take us a step closer to that. And if people really care about climate change on a abstract, philosophical level, not superficial level, they really care about it deeply, saying that, look, all these species that are endangered, that are going to be gone because of our participation in climate change. I mean, it's really depressing. I mean, you gotta, if you're like, if you have some sort of, like consciousness, I feel like everyone should feel a little bit self-conscious, a little guilt about making a species, like an entire species, extinct because we're like, well, we needed lumber, we needed to burn some coal, and then now we need to throw some trash away. We needed plastic bags, and now an entire species is gone. I mean, how many species are gone, right? Because it's our fault. I mean, I get there's a lot of species that weren't our fault, but I mean, there are enormous amount of species that are gone because of our direct faults, like, because our stupidity and our short-sightedness. Like, if you really care about on that kind of philosophic, abstract level, where we really look at humanity as a parasitical existence that really isn't doing any benefit to the earth, we're just self-absorbed, selfish, destructive creatures, then you have to kind of support UBI and say, like, let's give people the capacity to care about their immediate fucking survival. Like, that's what's the issue here. You can't expect anybody. Like, if I was starving and some asshole came up to me and was like, "Hey man, like, global warming, bro, like, it's gonna like wipe this whole place out, man." I'm like, dude, I'm not even sure I'm making next week. Fuck global warming. Fuck you. Like, that's gonna be the attitude. It has to. I mean, it's completely understandable. Like, you can't expect anybody to care about the future when they have no future. And I really feel like nobody's really addressing this. I mean, I get it. Warren and Sanders, I mean, they're addressing this in the margins of raising the minimum wage and, like, the wealth tax. I just don't feel that their solutions are progressive. I don't feel they're this modern age's solutions to problems. I really feel like they have this they're old visions. You really need something revolutionary, and that's what Andrew Yang offers. I really can't emphasize that enough. It's really what Andrew Yang offers. He's the modern candidate that sees the modern problems, that has the modern solutions. And I really hope that humanity, or not humanity, but the Americans can have like some kind of awareness to see that. Like, if you're not a Trump supporter and you're just some guy that wants Biden, Warren, or Sanders, I'm genuinely curious as to what better solutions they offer compared to Andrew Yang. Because I don't see it. I really don't see it. What are your thoughts, Cody?
Yeah, I mean, you've touched on a heck of a lot there, but to start off with, America, as you've said, we're like 15% of the global climate emissions, at least. We're responsible for 15 to 35% of global warming, according to like scientific studies or whatever. Which I agree with, absolutely. So the biggest problem that Americans are kind of griping with right now is like, should we be the leader, or should we just do what China does? And there has been this 16-year-old climate activist who has been in front of the United States Congress as well as the UN recently, Greta Thunberg. I may be pronouncing her name wrong. I'm sorry if I am. But she specifically, when she's in front of American congressmen who are questioning literally that like tone of speech where, hey, China is doing it, so why shouldn't we? And her response to the Republican senator who questioned her on this in this exact manner was that people in Sweden, and as we know, they're a much smaller and less they're less smaller population and a less smaller contributor of emissions and global warming in general than we are as far as science understands it. She says that, people in Sweden say the exact same thing about America. Well, America's doing it, so why shouldn't Sweden do it? So our goal as America, as you've said, Darnell, should be that we are the leaders. We should be in front of the pack, being like, man, we're sick of making a world that's worse for our children. We're sick of polluting our environment. We're sick of, just throwing plastic and unrecyclable goods all over the environment and letting microplasms infect our foods and letting all kinds of unforeseen consequences happen throughout all stages of the planet, basically, by the damage that we're doing environmentally. We should be at the forefront of that. And Andrew Yang recognizes this at the same time that he recognizes that the foreign governments are doing malicious crime and malicious, nefarious deeds, basically lying about X, Y, and Z, how much they're contributing, whether they're using illegal, basically internationally banned things. Like China is literally burning things that everyone, the UN has banned these things. And like suddenly people are finding studies where, hey, wait a second, this chemical is being emitted from certain sectors in China and it's spreading all across the planet. So obviously there needs to be international watchdogs, very hard pressure from the UN specifically that can't only be backed by the America. And Andrew Yang, he kind of falls weak on foreign policy, perhaps in like the regard that he might not be friends with, Justin Trudeau or Angela Merkel over in Germany. Like, he might be best friends with these people, but they're going to be willing to work with him just in the same way that they were willing to work with Obama, and they were willing to work with Trump. Trump just didn't want to work with these people. So we need someone who can at least work with our allies again. And but more importantly, because all candidates are willing to work with our allies. Andrew Yang is willing to tackle the crisis at like the roots of the cause. He's saying, hey, we're doing a lot of stuff and we need to be the leaders. We need to go nuclear, for instance, which a lot of candidates very shy away from. And that's a major issue I have with pretty much every single candidate besides Andrew Yang, because nuclear is basically the only option short term, at least. Um, so that's one thing that I would at least mention is, this is real. America should be the leader of it, and it's not an excuse to say, "Hey, other countries are polluting, so we should too." That's just not fair to say. That's never been the American spirit, and it shouldn't be now, just because we have, people that are raised in a different generation. So, having said that, your other point is basically, people, as you said, they shouldn't be just starving to death. They shouldn't be homeless people and mothers working hours and hours and hours. So, UBI addresses this, and getting the boot off people makes people care about the climate, as you've said. Like, if a mother is struggling to pay for her child and herself, she doesn't care about what's happening to her neighborhood. She might have a flood that's potentially like at risk because of a dam that's outdated and hasn't been updated by the American infrastructure that's very lacking in recent years. And suddenly, if you give people $1,000 a month, they might very much care about, and they might very much suddenly be aware of the issues that are happening around them. And that is so important for genuinely like a society to function. We all need to be aware of the things that are happening around us, and people that at least were voting back in early America, they were aware. Admittedly, It was unfortunately only rich white men that were allowed to vote, but they were aware of the issues that were happening because of the circumstances they were in. They didn't have this economic bootstrap, like constantly on their neck, stressed every morning, waking up, barely able to sleep every night. And if we have every single American not having to worry about that issue, we can have such an enlightened view of how we all should live, like as a country, which was what Darnell was trying to hint at, and me as well. We can't accept people that are homeless. We can't accept people that are suffering. We can't accept children that are struggling. And even with climate change, we can't accept, whole cities flooding and not getting the right amount of aid that they are. These are all American citizens this is happening to, regardless of their economic situation. And natural disaster hits them. Everyone in that situation should be helped to the extent that they themselves think are justifiable. Like we should give everyone the support that they need if Hurricane Katrina times two hits. And you get my point on that matter. Like we failed people in Texas, we failed people in New Orleans, we failed people all across the country. Uh, even outside of our country, where we have territories that are run by the United States government, such as Costa Rica, we need to look after our own. And that is like we're the most advanced society that exists. And we can't even look after people when something terrible happens to them. It says something about our own character when we fail at doing that. And we desperately need to address that. And I feel as though Andrew Yang sees this and he literally just hits the nail on the head in this regard. He understands this in a human way that a lot of other candidates, they see this whole presidency is just like a resume. It's like I'm running for president. I may or may not win. I can sign this off and like I can guarantee myself a career position for myself later in life. Andrew Yang doesn't care at all about any of that. And he's looking out for me and you, and that's what I see as most important in this candidate that I support.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's really with him. He said it multiple times. It's not about legacy. It's about him being a problem solver and seeing a problem that he wants to solve because he's part of the society that's gonna have to deal with these problems. And Omega being an example to the solution is so imperative to me because they were the starters of all this. They started the Industrial Revolution. So for America, for us to say, hey China, hey India, don't industrialize. You guys are polluting. How hypocritical is that? After all we've done as a nation. Well, during our industrial evolution, when we were making these refrigerators and factories that just constantly were just polluting, destroying the ozone. We were the starters of this. We were the forefront of this as a nation. Like we were the ones that were doing this. For us to say, well, now that other nations are doing this, we gotta be like, oh, hey, cool it. You guys can't do this. The environment. It's hypocritical. It's embarrassing. We can't say that. But what can we do? What can we do? And I'm saying that we can do a lot, actually. For starters, we can be the leaders in investing in green technology. We can be the leaders in saying we've recognized and understand the problem. We can be the leaders in saying we're moving towards a progressive direction in regards to climate change. But I don't see that. Not in the current administration. And to be honest, as ambitious as the other candidates are in this, I don't really see it as a feasible, realistic solution. Like, for instance, what the Green New Deal that was proposed recently by the Democrats were. It's not realistic to me. We're not gonna suddenly just stop 100%. Just like, all right, well, we're not gonna use gas anymore. I mean, gas isn't the problem. Like you said, the problem is energy consumption. That's the biggest contributor to energy consumption. So if we're gonna really fix this, nuclear power is our only option right now that's feasible, really, to cut down on all these energy and pollution problems that we have, consumption problems that we have, and we can be the leaders of this. We can be the ones to maybe develop the first singularity, the nuclear fusion. Like we're the ones at the forefront of this technology. We should be investing more in it. I agree 100% on that. But right now, really, I mean, we're regressing. Like I said with Trump, we're trying to revive our coal industry. We're trying to bring back old jobs that are, I mean, I don't believe in going backwards. We have the capacity. We have the smartest people here to bring our nation forward. We have to be the leaders of this, like you said. Like, we have to be the leaders, showing other countries, saying that, hey, we all started the same way, but we can end also the same way, and that end doesn't have to be a global catastrophe where half the world is flooded. I mean, have you seen the maps of the projections? It's depressing. Certain countries won't even exist after this global catastrophe happens, where sea levels just rise to such a proportion that whole islands will be swallowed up. They won't exist anymore. And a lot of these animals are endemic. And what do we do? I mean, we like to pretend that, hey, man, like, a lot of species have gone extinct. It wasn't all humanity's fault. True. But a lot of species have gone extinct because of humanity. We can't ignore that. I mean, what kind of hubris, what kind of self-importance, what kind of lack of consciousness do we have as a society, as a species, to say, well, they're not important. They don't matter because they don't have the consciousness that humans have. I mean, how much different is that from just common elitist mentality of people saying these people don't matter, they don't have enough money, they don't have enough intelligence, whatever. I mean, you can label it anywhere you want, but that's the dangerous step forward that I see with humanity as a general direction, and nobody's really addressing this. And Andrew Yang doesn't address this directly, but at least he's offering solutions to these practical concerns that everyone should be able to see if they were just not so distracted by other superficial concerns. Because climate change is real. Not real for me and you, maybe, because we might outlive it. But I'm saying for all life that exists right now, it's a very real threat. For humanity, for all these other animals that exist, it's a very real it's a very real threat. And for humanity to ignore this is not only irresponsible, it's downright immoral. Like, it's evil. It literally is the definition of evil. We don't care. We want what's best for us. I want that comfortable living space with the newest stuff. Doesn't matter if I have to kill make a species extinct for it. I want that pension house. I want that luxury home in the middle of the Amazon. Don't care if I have to chop down and make a bunch of species. I mean, it's that whole mentality. It just goes on and on and on and on and on and on. It's just, where does it end? Where do we gain some kind of like actual consciousness and say, hey, this is pretty fucked up? I mean, that's why I think Andrew Yang isn't afraid to curse, because sometimes it's best expressed by the word. It's fucked up. The situation is literally fucked up. We gotta admit that. I mean, you can say pretty words like, "Oh, it's bad, it's bad." No, it's fucked up. This is really, really fucked up right now. The situation we're in, and I don't see any other candidate really going towards a direction where these problems are going to be fixed. I feel like UBI can be not only an American evolution, it's a step towards American. Imagine if China adopted UBI. How massive would that be? Imagine if India adopted UBI. I mean, with the whole caste system, imagine. I mean, this is the whole about human society moving forward. And if we really want to, say USA, America number one, all this fucking superficial things we like to say, because we're not really number one. I mean, let's be honest. Are we really number one? We're number one in terms of, I guess some rich people in America have a right to say that. I mean, yeah, but as us, as a common fucking person, as a common human being, do we really have a claim to saying we're number one? Not at all. And I feel like if you really want to get to that next step, not for me, you, but for as like a human species, I think it'd be so empowering for a guy like Andrew Yang to be elected. For a guy like Andrew Yang to actually have this humanity-focused policy for America, the global leader, to have that policy to kind of lead the way forward. Because I imagine a future where we don't need to work and slave for a paycheck. We're gonna kind of get back our dignity, or redefine our dignity as human beings, and say, hey, I don't have to work for this or that or this like minimum wage job that's soulless and degrading, or if not that, just downright just meaningless labor. Like I'm like fucking pushing buttons for 8 hours just to get paid. Like if I can automate, if we can make a society where that's all automated away, and we can say, all right, like we're all taken care of now. We got the money. We got these robots working for us. Make a society like that, and nobody's so greedy that they have to have someone beneath them. Because I feel like that's the big problem. People need someone beneath them. It's a competition. I need someone beneath me to feel better about myself. I can't have people that are self-reliant. I can't have people that are independent. That takes away from my independence. That kind of selfish mentality, I feel like that kind of, in my opinion, kind of like originated at least in the modern society, kind of originated from American like imperialism and all this other stuff. That has to be done away with America. I think that'd be such a powerful message saying that, hey man, like we don't need to be enslaved to capital anymore. Like we can find meaningful work for ourselves, be more concerned about the world we're living in, not worry about like what to eat next, like some superficial bill to pay so I can have a place to live. We can care more about like other life forms on this earth that do much, like the honeybee that we are nearly driving to extinction. Does so much good for so many life forms. What are we doing to benefit other life forms? When's the last time we did anything beneficial to any other species? It's depressing and downright embarrassing, and we need to address that. And I think the first step is at least getting this guy, Andrew Yang, to office. I think that's the right step forward, and then hopefully we can be an example for other countries and not a sad bit of history for future generations to read about. What are your thoughts, Cody?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the Amazon forest is literally being burned down before our eyes at this point. And that's all for capitalist gain. So what do we really care about, like, as a people? Are we gonna care about what I can have as furniture next week or in a few months. I really want that polished Amazon forest cabinet that, cost 10 trees to make. Or do I just, care about being able to have some place to put my clothes in between the times that I sleep and put them on, basically. Um, we need to absolutely readjust ourselves in terms of our expectations, consumerism wise, just environmentally, and as you said, like, what are our expectations as a human species? Do we want to just like be slaves for these corporations that are controlling everything that we do in 10 years or in 50 years for 100 years from now? Do we want to have a say in what's happening? Do we want to have a gain in what's happening? Do we want to not work because of how great our country is doing? If we're in America and robots are literally doing every single job that isn't a creative or very fine skilled work, such as like CEO positions, entrepreneur positions, inventors, artists, writers. What are we going to do with people? Do we want to have slaves, or do we want to have people that thrive and are able to live their lives according to what humanity, uh, really like evolutionarily is about? It's about me caring for the people around me, the people that I have in my life that I care about, and I want to look after those people. I want to interact with those people as much as possible. I want to fulfill myself in those kinds of ways. And you can talk to parents about this, and they say that the most fulfilling time that they have is the time with their children. And to be honest, I feel as though most people feel that just in general with their families, whether they're willing to admit that or not. And if you're not needing to work anymore just to make ends meet because of the way our society has progressed, because you aren't a slave to a corporation that controls everything. You benefit from the gains that this corporation makes because we're in such a great society where, hey, you live here and it's effing great. It's fucking great. It's fucking great. Um, and you get money because of how fucking great it is. That's literally like the pinnacle, and you can find fulfillment because of how fucking great it is. That should be like the goal of humanity. And as you said, like, how empowering would that be to these other countries? Forget about America, where, yeah, we're the leaders. And hell yeah, we're the fucking leaders. We're gonna lead people into the future with UBI and climate change policies under Andrew Yang. And then other countries can be like, holy shit, look how great America's doing. Uh, and look how great their economy is doing. Because as we both have said, this is healthy for capitalism. If you don't start at zero, suddenly you get a new car mechanic position opening at a local car repair shop. Because guess what? Everyone is getting the car repairs that they've been putting off for years and years done. And those people suddenly need new help. So they hire somebody that you know, and that person is suddenly benefiting from a brand new job. And meanwhile, everyone else is fluctuating money into the economy in different ways. Restaurants are hiring cashiers and waiters and cooks, and painters are getting hired to do work that needs to be done that has been put off for a super long time. There thousands of dollars that get put in. Every single person in your community has $12,000 every year. That is an insane amount of money that is just going to enlighten people's lives all around their local communities. Forget about nationally, everyone cares about locally, and that's what this is going to hit directly. So, in closing, as me and Darnell have both said, Andrew Yang is the candidate for humanity's future as far as me and Darnell are both concerned. He's looking out for not only America and the future of America. Forget about the people that are living now. He's looking out for people that are going to be born 100 years from now. But not only that, he's looking to lead other countries into that future as well. And if we can only recognize the electability of this candidate, as well as the fact that he has this vision of such a superior future that we all can actually realize if we just accept it. Um, we're set as a species, to be honest. If only we could recognize it together. So I genuinely hope that we do. Any closing thoughts, Darnell?
There's an old saying that the world changes for the better. When old men plant trees, they know they will never sit in the shade. And that's us right now. That is literally us right now. To be honest, I don't think our generation will see catastrophic destruction or harm for a lot of the concerns that we've addressed tonight, or today, I should say. But all those concerns are very real for the future. I mean, you and I could die tomorrow, but that doesn't mean that these threats are eliminated. They're still very real. And it's really about us and our personal culpability. We might not